Education is the backbone of every economy. With education, we are not just looking at just the formal way of learning. Education also involves the informal way of learning and capacity building, such as carpentry, bricklaying, farming, agriculture, and just to name but these. However, we must always understand that as a people, education also involves blending the two. It is important for us to understand the need of blending both the formal and the informal way of learning in such a way that we will meet with existing reality. The place of Cameroon's development lies on its educational system, and Cameroon's universities and higher institutions has to take the root and the lead in terms of developing Cameroon in meeting up with educational policies and training that will help the nation to overcome its challenges. Cameroon's President Paul Biya has a vision that Cameroon will become emergent by 2035. It is a role of higher institutions and state universities to accompany the government to meet up with this vision of emergence by 2035. We cannot equally refute the fact that the educational system of Cameroon needs to be fully involved in terms of not just training hands-on learners, but people who understand the reality and changing landscape of Cameroon's reality. Many industry professionals, especially those in and out of Cameroon, have accused state universities and higher professional institutions of practicing cultural entropy, that is, doing one thing over and over again and expect different results, that is, being more theoretical than practical. State universities and higher professional institutions on their part have gone on an offensive in such a way that they have embraced the term entrepreneurship. To them, entrepreneurship is the only way that will help Cameroon to meet up with its vision of emergence come 2035. Most state universities and almost all professional higher institutions are branding themselves as being highly entrepreneurial. The question of the day now is, how much equipment, resources do they have to meet up with entrepreneurship and in terms of training Cameroon entrepreneurs in order to have vision, mission, and in order to have jobs and become job creators than job seekers. We've seen schools where those who claim to be training entrepreneurs don't even run a single business, not to talk of having an active Facebook page. We've seen schools where those teaching digital marketing do not even have Twitter accounts to boast of, but yet they keep clamoring the fact that they are highly entrepreneurial in terms of training students and lifelong learners. The question now is, how equipped are these schools, and what is the means in which they are training our kids in terms of meeting up with existing reality? Professor Bernard Folo, in his book titled The Genuine Intellectual, states that a university is not for a mindless mob but for a talented 10. He went further in stating that a university without a good structure and a good library for students to do research and for students to get practical is more of a glorified secondary school. It is within this context that we are looking at the platform in which rethinking education in the transformed landscape, looking at Cameroon's development. How far are our universities and how equipped are our higher institutions? This is House of Commons with me, JAVIS. Welcome back from that break. Here in the studio, we apologize for the late start. One of our guests who was on his way to who is in Boya on his way to DOUALA just had an accident, so he is struggling with the situation, and that's why we are going to kickstart today's edition with our program with our panelist who is already in the house, and the others who will be joining us soon. We regret to announce to you that one of our guests had an accident while coming to the studio of My Media Prime. Here in the studio, in the capacity from the University Institute of Gov of Guinea, he is Dr. Ako John Ako, who doubles in his capacity too as a barrister and a political analyst. This time around, we are looking at education from this perspective as you listen to my editorials. I equip our professional institutions in terms of meeting up with Cameroon's educational system, and we are equally looking at rethinking education in a transformed landscape and looking at Cameroon's development. Dr. Ako John Ako, you're welcome to the program. It's a privilege you are here.
Yeah, I believe once more, and again, on Media Prime. We are here to talk on sensitive issues, and considering the landscape that Cameroon is trailing, I believe very strongly that when we came out, in fact, when the government came out with a program we call the LMD, Licence Master Doctorat, one of its most brandished or brand active propaganda was that one student, one job. And today we begin to realize that it's like somewhere the government of Cameroon acted more like a praise singer than acting in its real domain. Because one of the questions which I asked, I mean at the time, sometime far back in 2008, when we had a conference at the Yaoundé Conference Center with actors that were drafting the new program, I asked if there is a relationship between the universities and the corporate world, if there is a relationship between the universities and economic demands of the Cameroonian people. And I believe that question was answered in the negative, that there is none, and that the new program has not even provided new room that universities could sign personal agreements with companies, all the like, because everything always starts from the central government, that the Minister of Higher Education is the loan and the guardian of the education and the way piece of this particular government. To what extent have we applied this system? About 10 years on, what has become of Cameroon educational system? Are we innovative? Are the youths that have been trained, are Cameroonians being trained from these institutions capable of feeding themselves into the realities of the job market? The question still remains lacking, and that a lot of them still fool the junks of the streets, maybe as ambulance or pedestrian sellers, and others not even knowing where to go, others very desperate in the high sea in the course of searching for greener pastures abroad. A lot has been left unsettled in Cameroon, but gladly and most preciously is that some of us belong to this private higher education in Cameroon. One of it is the University Institute of the Gulf of Guinea, which we can realize that today, with great innovations from 1993, I will tell you that that school was created to presently 2020. The University Institute of Gulf of Guinea has been one of innovations and one that has offered one of the highest training, not only in terms of quality, but in terms of number, and notwithstanding that we are always at the forefront of innovations in terms of training, we have added a lot of new fields. And I mean, like this year, not ever than before, that the domains of BTS, HND Masters, and even professional bachelor's degree have had a new domains and new fields where students can specialize.
Barrister, I want us to now, first of all, look at the landscape itself before moving out to specific. As you
okay.
Now, when we look at Cameroon's educational landscape, you listen to my editorial, which was Cameroon's vision to meet up with, to become an emerging nation by 2035. Globally, does the educational system of Cameroon meet with that aspiration in terms of meeting up with Vision 2035? Because we understand that state private universities don't have the affiliation to be autonomous. They must be accredited or affiliated by state universities.
Yeah, it is normal in terms of, in fact, for quality reasons and hierarchical demands by the state. Cameroon has not gotten to this level where we said the education is not yet at the tertiary level, where we can confidently believe that private higher institutions can award certain training or certain certificates or run certain programs without this particular guardianship or tutelage. I remember very strongly that before, in Cameroon, we had just a Catholic university, and again, if I go, there's a Catholic University for Central Africa with its headquarters in Yaoundé, and then we talk of the University Konsande, which is based at Somalia and Nangabonko, and we begin to understand that there was a need for the government to come as a guidance, and again to see if such lay private institutions can come out or mark themselves as one within the domain. But now in Cameroon, I will tell you that what is the problem in Cameroon is that we have well-refined, decorated, more apprehended system, but then implementation has been always a problem of Cameroonians. Some of those schools which are being run in the backyard, some don't even have proper or adequate classrooms for students, talk less of the hygienic and maybe the conducive atmosphere of learning within certain environments, which I will tell you, the government, some of those state universities, which are called upon as guidance or tuteled institutions, also still validated their programs, and those programs are being run in such environment, even when there is a lack of laboratories or the realities of the practice. Remember, if we are talking of entrepreneurship, there must be a need between the government and the private institutions and the training the student receive, not only in theory, but where they will be capable of carrying out their practice. What we ask, how many of those institutions have accords and agreements that may facilitate classroom field studies? And many of them will tell you that they got the authorization at the ministry after some falsified documentations were presented. Because for you to own and run a school in Cameroon today, all of it remains in documentations. And even when such visits are allowed by such universities that come out to visit the infrastructure and see if a particular institution is capable of running a particular program, we know what Cameroon is, impossible n'est pas camerounais. And so a lot of those who come out for visits or those who come around to associate with such universities all will end up with private envelopes which choked up their pocket in the cost of having the validation of the higher authority of the university concerned. And in many instances, such authorizations are awarded. And what leaves the common man, what leaves the common Cameroonian that does not even know that since this university being brandished and published in public as one of the private higher institutions in Cameroon, what is the quality of training there? Who are the teachers? Because one of the things which I begin to wonder when I look at what goes on.
I was just coming to that, because when we are looking at the rethinking education. Now, there's what we call cultural entropy, where many industry professionals, those who recruit students and those with whom who recruit students who come and work from their different sectors, says that the kind of materials being given to to those who go to school is obsolete. That there is need for Cameroon's higher institutions, including IUG and other institutions, to look at a way in which they can fine-tune their program to meet up with more hands-on teaching and experiences in our society, so that Cameroon can have that development, that we are training more of theoretical people than practical people.
Yeah, I will tell you that all that has been taken into consideration. The last university reforms, I mean, when it comes to Agenda 2035, the university reforms in Cameroon has a lot of that. And we can tell you that the government will tell you that it's an intention to create a law school at the University of Boya and again at the University of Yaoundé too. But all these efforts have been dumped silent, because somewhere some people are feeling like training people in this particular domain now in the universities and ready for the job market, it will jeopardize their traditional or local practices, which to them has stood the test of time for over centuries or decades. So what becomes of those who were not trained? This is the problem. And I will tell you that in my university, at the University Institute of the Gulf of Guinea, we train nurses, we train what I call physiotherapists. We equally train a lot in terms of medical domain. In the technological domain, you realize that we have electrical power system, we have automobile, we have civil engineering. I'm telling you that, meaning somebody who leaves out a civil engineering HND diploma, and even to some extent bachelor's and master's degree, will be more fitted in the job market than a Cartier bricklayer. And you can imagine what it is. Yeah, we have a lot of agreements. At IG, we have more than 500 companies that takes our students in for practical training. And if you want to have a taste of yourself, we are not saying like we are trying to brandish something. When you pass out at the job market today, just in the town of DOUALA, and you try to find out, IUG is highly represented in terms of personnel, not only
Doctor,
but we said even in the practical domain. The ministry, I just want to add that what has the problem in Cameroon is that most often those who read or had considered the programs of the Ministry of Higher Education and more in the classroom, very few of them put a meaning. In fact, at the level of the ministerial document, each specialty had about 960 hours for an HND program for what we call fieldwork or practicals. But how many of those schools really integrate into their training this particular part of the training? Meaning at least 2 months. A student should have at least 2 months, which will assume that he or she might have had at least 80 to 90 hours at the level of
Doctor, there have been that problem where people look at the educational system, especially at the level of HND, to be more exam-oriented than training industry professionals. People say there's not different, visibly not different between the HND and advanced level, because students will have to go through averages and students will have to write the particular exam, and they are trained just to have an exam and pass and go, as compared to the BSc, where students are being trained to be life-on experience. Is there not a problem of Cameroon's education in terms of the HND harmonizing the way in which is being taught?
Yeah, you are talking of being taught. I'm still telling you that when you read through every agenda, within the program provided by the Ministry of Higher Education, honestly, in every specialty, there is what we call field work or practicals or academic internship. And on this particular agenda, I had at least, I said, 906 or 96 or 960 hours, or I mean a lot of that. So you cannot tell us if to a particular school they realize that internship is not important, considering again with a year like this, or going to the field and having about a lot of it signing personnel, because I remember some state universities equally complain. When students are on internship, you need a tutor or an administrator that monitors them
on the
field to make sure that they are highly involved in the training. So if you have students in Bafoussam and the school is in DOUALA, will the school be capable of manning or financially capable of managing this effort in the field?
Like those students who go to Garoua, different parts
that
of
is
the
what
nation.
we are saying. This is where some of those schools, which are not even capable of doing it, have a problem in maintaining the program of the ministry to its entirety. And within it, if we have to do, I believe very strongly that the Minister of Higher Education need now to, yes, there is a department in charge of teaching and follow up at a private higher institution, or generally teaching and programming in state universities. But is it equally being done at the level of private universities to really make sure that a student that's called a professional bachelor's degree or a higher national diploma has this adequate training between theory and classroom? A lot of them end up pirating, or how can I call, plagiarizing a lot of pages and then present them as end of coursework. This, we don't even have equally some of those, the materials capable enough of detecting whether a particular student was at a particular company or not. To what extent are the corporate organizations equally relying on those materials that have been plagiarized in their absence? A student is presenting a report on a particular company he has never visited. We have had a lot of that. Then those who collect materials from their own very classmates then present as if they were their materials. Are we capable of identifying this? To what extent as the Ministry of Higher Education capable of assessing the veracity, true nature? Let me say, because this program was written sometime in 2008 for state universities, and within the private higher education only came applicable about 2 or 3 years ago for the Francophone section, and for the English programs like the HND, it was just about 2 years now. To what extent can the ministry really satisfy himself that the work they did some 4 years ago fits the realities of the emerging economy by 2035? Remember, it is in the same vein that they will tell you that the Silicon Mountain at the University of Boya, which was equally related to the university, the Boya University School of Technology, which is again a partner of the Silicon Mountain, there's disrupted activities after the Anglophone crisis. And then the
Good. I was just coming now to the level of transformed landscape because one, we've had the Anglophone crisis in the north and southwest region, and two, we have the Boko Haram insurgency in the north region, and three, we have the Seleka rebels in the east region. We now come now to the level in which the coronavirus pandemic, which registered its presence in Cameroon in March 2020, and schools, educational institutions were badly affected between March, April, May, June, where we had just the examination classes, and some few state universities were asked to resume under strict health conditions. Looking at this aspect, adding to the economic situation of the country already, to the chaotic nature of the economic situation, how much can we say that educational institutions have adapted in terms of looking at ways to bypass this incident with maintaining standard? Because you will agree with me that these are factors that badly affect the educational system.
Yeah, a lot of those factors. What bothers my mind was me watching the media last week or 2 or 3 days ago, that most of those state actors that are supposed to promote education in Cameroon pass themselves visiting public institutions. And I asked if to them they believe that the private institutions don't exist. You will find the Ministry of Secondary, Basic, or even we are waiting for the opening of the universities on the 15th of October, if the same will do the contrary, because most of them made their visits to public schools. And I said to public schools vis-a-vis private education, which is the greatest. And I said the private education in Cameroon has its place, and the government knows very well that it cannot train everybody. When you go to measures that have been adapted, especially within this chaotic environment, talk less in a situation in the Northwest and the Southwest, which kept us a bit comfortable for the first time after 4 years, that a lot of some hardline leaders of the Anglophone restoration movement now decided in their unanimity that there will be schools and that their security forces, which they call, should take security guard, that schools should resume, with again some predetermined preliminary principles that such schools that are going to open their doors have to respect. So what has the government done on its part? I said the government has still worked on protecting justice civil administrators, and meaning the governor is important, the SDO is important, what becomes of the principals, what becomes not only the principal.
The government said, I think the governor of the Southwest region, Ben Alkalia Bilai, said last week that teachers within of different sectors will be protected, both private and non-private. And the regional delegate for secondary education gave firm instructions that those teachers who have migrated from their village or their town of teaching to other safe areas should go and register their name. Them to give their names in a certain office, which a census will be carried out, and they will ensure their protection. And looking at the higher institution itself, it is equally in prelude to the resumption. Now, can we not say that those are steps taken by Cameroon's government? The same situation applies to Bamenda, where the governor of the Northwest region, Adolphe Lely Lafrique, still maintained that firm security measures will be put in place to ensure that the teachers, private and students, are protected. Is that not a good move?
Yeah, you might, in Cameroon, I'm sick and tired of political propaganda statement used by members of the administration. And I will tell you that a lot of that is cosmetic, and not only cosmetic, may be perishable, because they will not last, and they will never, and I mean not even come into existence. I've seen a government where we realize that the life of the governor is better. When we look at principals in various schools, how many of them have military guards around the villages and the towns where they head as principals or headmasters or headmistress? So what becomes when such declarations are made by the civil administrators, which to them at the same time, when the declarations are being made, they are highly guarded by armor cars and other military weapons or armed weapons around them. So we think very strongly that Cameroon is within that phase, I mean at the tertiary level, I mean within the numerical economy, which we all propagate, and that if Cameroon needs to succeed, the life of each and every one matters. The private education or layout education matters. So several schools have been closed in towns like Kumba, Manfi, Boya, Tiko, why not in Widikum, and even in places like Bambili and others, which are private institutions, because of lack of security. How many of them have been guarded? How many of their homes have been surveyed? How many teachers have been taken out of their homes in an armored car?
But Dr. Ako, you two will agree that within the 4 years, the government may have seen their weaknesses, and this time around, they've seen where they failed in protecting the students, and say, okay, measures have been put in place, and taking into advantage that some separatist leaders have given green light for effective resumption. And the government says that it is going to ensure the safety of private higher institutions, secondary schools, and teachers in different spheres.
Yeah, what I'm saying, it is always easily said than it is done. I have said with this government, there is nothing I have not seen in terms of propaganda and selling of state strategies, which at the end, we have always ended up as, laboratory rats, where some teachers are used to test the efficacy of the government. I mean, in a crossfire exchange of weapons between the separatists or the restoration forces and the government, a lot of those victims have always been civilians. And at the end of the day, we keep on sending them messages of condolences to the bereaved family. How many principals? You remember in some schools like in Tiko, teachers or proprietors' fingers were cut off. What has become of those schools? What has the government done on behalf of those same people who are victims of the absence of the same state security that was to be provided for all Cameroonians without distinction? But then we have not noticed of any member of the cabinet, of the governor, of the Northwest or that of the Southwest, whose fingers have been cut off. So we need to look at it. That it means that the members of the central administration, they are looked upon as first class or high class citizens of the government, while others who are not of the government are considered just to say hi, and that God that lives is a God of all, and that everybody to fend for himself. That is why we said the educational atmosphere, before we are going to rule in this wanting situation, talk of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen buckets, we have seen tablet of soaps that did not even arrive all the corners of Cameroon, and we are still talking and saying within the same prescription of the various ministries that schools will be reopened in a sincere measures passed and ordained by the state. To what extent will private higher education capable of seeing into it that there's a permanent alcoholic jail for all those who are getting to class, that there is the presence of face masks for all students in various campuses? To what extent are we going to guarantee, like the Minister of Secondary Education that said at least 50 students per classroom? And I ask myself, in the advent of COVID, do we still need?
How is that going to be applicable in your school, like IUJ, that we have that number of restrictions, 50 per class?
Yes, 50 per class. I believe IUG before then has what we call practical classes, and within it we were recruiting 56. It will mean that the government is just going to reduce about six from what we had originally. And notwithstanding, IUG, which is again an academic training with modern classrooms, made it possible that we have the evening and the day program. And so, which means it is a standard in IUG before even COVID that we have the first group of people that comes in the morning and the other group that comes at night. And most often those who choose to attend classes at night, their classes are always very sparse and unoccupied. So meaning the 6 that are left, it is capable for us to tell some students that from now you will surely take on your lectures in the evening, and then we rotate it all over. So it has not cost a lot. Our campuses are notwithstanding, we are presently going again under construction with a new building of about 24 new classrooms that will be open for the 2020-2021 academic year. So we are not really, to insist, within the practical, or we call them the laboratories, we have laboratories that can take maximum 30 candidates per lab.
Doctor, we are looking at this COVID issue, Anglophone crisis, like the problem solution must come from the government. But however, I think the secondary schools should be more worried than higher institutions. But looking at the context here in terms of how other schools in different nations have survived, they've looked for different adaptive measures to teach their students a part of the normal way in which the classrooms should function. We have in a system in Cameroon where most teachers believe that education must be a four-wall system of education. What are the higher institutions themselves doing? Are they not to be blamed for not coming up with measures? Because there are institutions that are supposed to be creative and proactive. There are institutions that are supposed to teach the government that this is what we have come as innovation. Universities are centers for innovations. Instead, they're expecting more from the government. Are they not failing as far as this is concerned?
I don't want to believe that they are failing, because I will tell you that even today you will realize that Le Jeune Belambela, the Minister of External Relations, gave a speech to the United Nations to what we call a video conference. And that has already been done by members of government, and which is already an active part. Students have defended already in some state universities through video conferencing, which means some state universities are already moving ahead and applying the measures that were used within the month from the month of March right up to here. In IUG, I will tell you that we have what we call La Voix du Golfe, which is their campus radio, not only on campus, but relaying on, FM frequency 94.7. If you put it wherever you are, to some regions of the south, the west, the southwest, and even the west region, you receive the frequency on 94.7, and that gives us the edge. We have taught over this radio in that students that are concerned, you have on their various social media platforms, they communicate the frequency, and students can follow up their classes at the same time everywhere they are. And then before, students, teachers, most of those who live in the old age period, that means that they had their hand materials written in pen, had decided, were asked or advised to get into soft copies. So before a lecture is given online, with a lot of online platforms, the teacher can now send notes through any of the social media platforms. It can be WhatsApp, most regularly used, and others. Now we attended, because I've equally taught through having Zoom meetings and giving lectures through the Zoom, that wheresoever students are, they can follow the lecture and participate exactly as they are in class. Yes, we might not say that it was all merrymaking or that it was all positive. We have a lot of hitches. There are a lot of hitches because we asked to what extent will some of those students be capable of laying hands on data, and who will be financing the operation of data, or that will just be a deduction in their school fees. Those were some of the things asked. Then to the lecturers, how do they get materials on soft copy? How do they get the data? To what extent? What advantages will they receive? But then some schools can go on. That is why some of the schools, there is a syndicate for syndicate of teachers that have just made a demand to the Minister of Secondary Education, asking them that if we have to adopt with the COVID-19 measures and that classes are going to be enlarged, those that were not used to going for classes in the night and not supposed to go to classes in the night, are they going to have extra allowances for coming to class in the night? Those who are going to use the social, what I call e-learning platforms, are they going to be given extra allowances for data or time being used at home? So those are a lot of questions.
Okay, so now, and that brings me to the next question, because we are looking at an adaptive measures. Let's say the private institutions need to go more of e-learning, but the common government system or educational system, you will bear with me, that does not give room for e-learning. There are no laws that guarantee educational laws that ensure e-learning. I think universities have tried this before, but mentor universities like the University of Boya, University of Bamenda have totally rejected e-learning from when it all started. Is it a green light?
Oh, if they all rejected, I believe there was an act of ignorance, because in the changing world, we should learn to move with the world rather than staying in a position in which we are. Sometimes I said, especially when it comes to regime change, that we should be capable of accepting change, because change is that factor that if you resist it and when it's taken to you, you may be dragged to mud or left behind. The universities, like what you just cited, University of Bamenda or Boya, were supposed to be the mother university to even carry on. In fact, looking at the state of that university, that it runs a whole school of technology, which was even a question to be sent back to the School of Technology to see how possible the whole university can be connected at its various departments or various faculties. One of the states in the world that have been celebrated of recent in e-learning is the state of Israel, that it is possible to host more than 1,500 students in a singular, a session of a classroom. If this works well, especially with what we call today the Zoom meetings, it is possible for teachers, which we mean, COVID or no COVID, for us to decongest our classrooms. There's a possibility that a teacher will be in the university campus where he is with a board in front of him, and that all the students are connected at the same time, and the projector of the Zoom he is using pointed to the board. Whatever lecture, mathematics, physics, or chemistry, can be taught on a distance, and the message is passed. The universities of Boya, which we know used to be considered like a place to be, and many people still say that is a place to be. And so if it's a place to be, it should not be lacking when it comes to innovations. We should instead accept innovations, then see if we can be leaders. What makes a distinction between the United States and many other countries in the world is that the United States believes that when it comes to technology, they need to lead. They need not be lacking. They need not even reject. Today we are talking of the usage of what we call renewable energy. The United States is already making provision that the petrol they have fought wars in the world might become obsolete or outdated source of energy. And so how do they do it? If you get with the Donald Trump campaign speech during their debate, he said he has put a lot of billions on renewable energy, not forgetting that the other outdated energy, which we say in the next few years may equally suffer a defect. But we need, first of all, to be sure of the jobs that renewable energy can create. We need to be sure of the job that teaching online can create. We need to be sure of what jobs e-marketing, e-commerce will create. We need to see a lot of these things. Some people, like you just said, how can a teacher be teaching entrepreneur and the teacher does not run a single online platform?
That's part B of
that is what we are saying, because I have been, when we talk of formal and informal education, people have forgotten that there is also what we call non-formal. Non-formal education is the one we receive out of school through conferences, through whatsoever meetings and debates, which, like what we are doing here now, people are being educated. So where do we put this form of education? People are equally known that in Cameroon today, I am equally a member of the civil society and the founder of the Cameroon Youth Movement Association. Their entrepreneurship is our goal. How will youth lead university? Because I realize there is a lacking. Some school programs even kept the studies on entrepreneurship away, and others don't even know. There is what we call personal strategic planning. What becomes of students when they leave school? Some don't even know. Some people start planning their life after school after they have left school. Yes, at the University of Harvard, they have what they call this course, personal strategic planning, where people make their plans while they are in school, not waiting that until they leave a particular university before getting into the job market. What do you wish to become should not be a question you ask after the certificate has been given to you. What you need to become is a question you answer before even the certificate is awarded to you. This makes us again to understand that education like said by others, it's not the paper we receive, it's what we end up doing and how it takes you to do it. You have to build such a career within the academic environment. I will tell you on that note again, the Ministry of Higher Education, through professional training, instituted what we call tutor projects. Tutor projects were meant for students in group of 2 or 3, which we are equally practicing in IUG. That student who are at the level of the bachelor's degree comes out with a project, 3 or 4 of them. And that project is presented before an academic panel. They will give us where the idea of the business, the setting of the business, they run the finances, the successes and possible failures they expect to find. And then they make a business projection of the financial benefit. But what happened with these students? A lot of them wrote this project and their marks were awarded 15, 16, 17, or 20. What becomes of those projects? They simply fold them up and then take their certificate back to their parents and start wishing that their mother will continue feeding them, that their father. I told a lot of them that the moment you wrote a project or you finish with a project, it is but normal that you should be connected with that project. Try to see the life wire where that project can
it still applies. It still applies to the undergraduate debate, the undergraduate project.
Yes, some schools don't even do it. That's what I'm saying. At the bachelor, I'm talking about the bachelor,
yes.
Where the University of Chang, that mentors a lot of universities. It's a must that after the academic internship project, you are going to write the tutor project, where now it is on what will become of you. What do you intend to do with your life after this certificate? Many students still just consider it as part of the demands.
Is it not because the state has not made it as a policy that this tutor project should be proposed? Because in most cases, I think just few universities in Cameroon where undergraduate students defend their end of course project before a panel of jury and their parents. Okay. But we don't see that. We only see that more of the level of masters.
Yes, that is what I'm saying. That there is a problem. There is a problem there with what we call follow-up. Follow-up. We need to see, like I used to tell some of those institutions, that in a day like what you say, graduation ceremony, we should be capable on the day of the graduation ceremony to present to fellow mates, students of their batch that have just emerged with a project that is already going on. I have mentored at the level of the Cameroon Youth Movement. I've already seen students who have online business and they are thanking the group for assisting them. I've seen students that already own restaurants because we have told them, when you come to Cameroon Youth Movement, here you don't beg for money. Here you look for means of working money. Bring out your project and work over it. An idea remains an idea only when it is not work. The moment an idea is transformed into the realities, then that is a dream comes true. And this is what we don't know. Some of those who still have the certificate are still feeling like they need a job. And so somebody owns a restaurant and then the person is still applying to the job market. He needs an employment. He or she does not even ask himself, how much would they pay me there in that particular company? When you go around to even ask people, those who teach in private higher education, how can a student that has studied marketing looking for a primary school to teach? Then I feel there is a problem with the way in which education is being carried out in Cameroon. We need that structure, like I said, between the Ministry of Higher Education and private university or public university. Then the demands of the corporate world. What are companies offering? We need what we call the bank for the small and medium-sized enterprises to lobby itself present in universities that at the end of a student or a university cycle, the best 4, 5, 10, 15 projects will be funded by the state under state mentorship. It is possible. We did that within the fallen Cameroon marketing board, where farms were open for farmers, and then the marketing board made sure that the cocoa developed until production, that you still supply back the cocoa to the marketing board. But this is an institution that the Cameroon government, which we have for over 38 years, one of its failures is failing to act in realities. And so farmers in Cameroon today are crying for lack of that follow-up, the monitoring by state authorities, the financing from the state. What will become of these present new programs, while others who are in the Silicon Valley, in some of the places around the world, and I can talk at a university like that of Michigan, where when you are a technology student, you are not trained to become a doctor, but you are trained to become an inventor. So that by the end of your studies, you should be capable of presenting to the university what you have invented. What have you innovated? This is knowledge. Okay. If you have innovated within your domain, then I believe the universities we have should not just be propaganda universities that will pass on radio and TV, will broadcast the message. People should be capable of identifying that that Steve Jobs was coming from your university, and that the next Neil Armstrong was from this university. When it comes to agriculture, we should be capable of identifying that the students from the University of Chang who are doing agronomy are the best in terms of poultry, piggery, or even what I call potato farming, or whatsoever tomatoes.
Okay.
Can we really be glad that the educational system in Cameroon has met the aspiration and the wishes of the government? The government has a lot to do. There is a lot at the part of the government, and we say if we can serve the practicalities, giving it that practical notion which is inscribed in the program, then I believe education in Cameroon is going to be one of the best.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Ako John Ako. We will be taking on the break, and when we come back, we'll move to part 2 of this program, how entrepreneurial are our entrepreneurial institutions and how much should be done in order for them to meet up with the existing reality. We've seen circumstances where those who come to teach entrepreneurship in our schools don't even own a single business. How can someone be teaching you on making 100 million with that person looking miserable and looking just 100 francs CFA? This is House of Commons, part 2, right ahead. Entrepreneurship involve training people from a different perspective for them to become job creators more than job seekers. It is an aspect where schools need to train students to look for problem solving and then giving excuses. It is an aspect where students need to look beyond solution than just looking at the problem. That's why in most universities you will hear they will tell you the solution is rather than the problem is. An entrepreneur is someone that look at ways in which to resolve problems and forecast solutions to problems yet to exist within our society. We've seen schools and universities in Cameroon branding themselves as entrepreneurial universities and entrepreneurial institutions. Even undergraduate and postgraduate programs have elements of entrepreneurship. But how are these programs structured? How much resources do they have in order to train entrepreneurship? Entrepreneurship equally involves digital marketing, because you cannot talk about entrepreneurship without looking at a form of marketing which is digital. And in some issues and circumstances, you will see those teaching digital marketing to entrepreneurs in higher institutions and universities not even having a Facebook page. Some don't have active Twitter accounts in order to do their digital marketing. How can you be teaching digital marketing without having social media handle, without being an expert? Entrepreneurs usually are not people who are PhD holders, but they are people who live the existing realities and teach you how to resolve them. They must not have a master's degree before they teach. They must have businesses before they come and teach. These are professional programs, but often we've seen where teachers who are being sent to teach these programs are more theoretical than practical basis. At the end of the day, we have a society where more job seekers are there are more job seekers than job creators. It is within this context that I welcome Dr. Ako John Ako for this part 2 of this program. Sadly enough, our guest whom we invited from Boya had an accident, so he's not yet in the studio, and we pray that he arrive here safely. And of course, may Dr. Ako John Ako, we will come back to you as far as this is concerned. We'll look at entrepreneurship from a different perspective, and many people are defining entrepreneurship from their different contexts. You as a scholar, how will you look at entrepreneurship?
Yeah, one of it, I think entrepreneurship, which has been defined by a lot, and it has to do also with the conception. It has to do with passing from theory to practice. Entrepreneurship has to look at anything that has to do with self-reliance initiative. That makes the individual autonomous, capable of running a particular activities within a particular domain. That equally means that entrepreneurship has as objective to remove people from dependence to, interdependence to independence, meaning they are not going to be job seekers. This individual, instead of fending from themselves, they might equally create opportunities for others. Entrepreneurship has a lot, in fact, has a lot of advantages when it comes to the government, not only to the government, but equally to the individuals, because it might, at the moment of creating jobs for yourself, if such a company is capable of running thousands of available opportunities, then it serves the government headache of unemployment. Many governments around the world, including that to which we belong, has failed to solve this economic headache. Some nations have succeeded and successfully kept employment within a particular rate. We're talking of states like the United States or many other developed states like Germany, where at times, or Canada, where they will even be crying, in fact, that there is absence of a labor force. And so they need people. That's why we talk of the USDV program that brings in laborers from across the globe to the United States. We have equally presently the Canadian government that has run the initiative of the Canadian live and work in Canada, which means that they recognize that there are jobs available, but there is the absence of a labor force. In China, of recent, you realize that the Chinese economy has just discovered that the policy of one family, one child did not work. And so the government now authorizes family members that can go to having a second baby, because China used this policy in the past for controlling population. All these principles which I'm telling you, we now see that in a country that is vibrant and buoyant, population has never been a problem, like presented by President Emmanuel Macron against African nations for huge family standards, and that the problems of Africa are problems of huge families, and that Africans should learn to control the number of families. In many nations where there's a population, there is always equally need for the feeding of their jobs available. If many companies left the United States and relocated in China, it is not only that the Chinese were populous, but that they were entrepreneurs in China than they had been also in America. And so that is what we're saying, that at the level of creating companies, you generate jobs. And when a population becomes conscious, so that is why when we talk of the world richest group of persons, then we are going to still come back to the same two nations, the United States and China. These rich people we are talking about, we are not talking of politicians. We are not talking of those who do or run charity organizations. We are talking of entrepreneurs, which means that the greatness of a nation will equally be determined by the strength of what entrepreneurial spirit such a population bears in mind. And so having a great nation need to have great entrepreneurs. So it will be very difficult for you to have a great nation and then you have a very lacking entrepreneurs, like where we have the political controlled economic system in countries like Russia, where we see that politics or politicians feel that they should have more money than those who run entrepreneurs. And what becomes of sort a state control policy, where the few who are in government manage the wealth of the nation, and then at the same time their citizens are left on their own to beg in and around the territory. We have seen that including Cameroon. One of the highest crimes this nation committed was inability to fit with the President Paul Biya policy of rigor and moralization. When the head of state came in power in 1982, he told us that the law would meet its force. We were expecting the law to be meeting its force every time. But once we called that those who have stolen state funds should be dragged to court, the same president also who only proved, were approved, and more of it. What have we become today? A lot of companies have closed down. Many folded up. What we used to know of the sitabac, we used to know of things like the local, what we call the chang shoes, the rubber shoes, men's slippers, Cameroonians don't produce. We now consume everything from our neighboring nations, and even we depend on international trade or international commerce to feed our homes with what? Rice.
Just
rice.
160 cows imported from France.
Just imagine that. If we have to import, how many? We have a lot of schools in charge of technology and automobile. How many Cameroonians are capable? I'm telling you now that we can change that engine, coming for a chain or an engine saw to run a car. That is what those guys did. When you go to the revolution, this South Korean example, that they could buy products from Europe and then try to see how such products could be produced within the economy. And before we know it, South Korea, that was at the same level with Cameroon in 1970s, has become an emerging economy and a power somebody cannot mention. Then you go to a small nation like Singapore that has less than 1 million inhabitants and again classified among the wealthiest or most beautiful nations. What has become of a nation that has an operation, Green Revolution, launched by the President Ahmadu Ahidjo sometime in 1972, that fed nearly the whole sub-region. And today, 40 years after, the same nation is unable to feed itself. What has become of those entrepreneurs that operated at, the rice station in Dub and many others in Sancho?
We had Wada
in the womb area in the Menchum Valley. So what has become of them?
And CDC now is creeping and crawling.
It's crawling. We have talked of it here. if the CDC will collapse, when we come of those products, the bananas don't exist again. We need, when we talk like this, some people feel like we are joking. Banana, the Del Monte banana in the CDC plantation gave at least the agricultural technique for those who were living around the industry. And entrepreneurship is not just what you think, those who make money. We look at the secondary industries that develop with the presence of the giant industry. Those who were depending on bananas as their market in towns like DOUALA, ask the mothers, they will tell you how many fingers of those plantains they buy for 200 or 100 as against 160, which means somewhere they will need to make a choice whether to consume home product or to consume foreign product. So if we use 200 and it can give us a half kilo of rice, and you use 200 and you buy 9 or 7 fingers of banana, will this be capable of feeding my home as against a half kilo of rice?
Doctor, the problem here, should we not blame higher institutions that like you people man? Because when we see the issue of entrepreneurship, it's not just an issue of the government taking leadership. Higher institutions need to take a leadership. For example, you've cited a good number of examples of the WADA. We have the CDC, which is creeping and crawling. We don't have fish farming, poultry, and of course the animal breeding industry. Everything. Is it not a place for private higher institutions to see how they can train students to man this position and to see how they can develop these industries, as far as that is concerned?
Yeah, I told you at the very beginning that some of us and some of our schools are not doing wrong. Within IUG, I cannot tell you a lie that we are producing the best in the domains we are running. We might have not been involved in agriculture, but I believe somewhere in DOUALA, your colleagues who does journalism at the level of the University Institute of the Gulf of Guinea will tell you that they're doing well, not only as presenters, but also as writers. We need not only look at entrepreneurship from what we see in the sale and marketing, but the capability of being capable, being inserted in the social, political need, economic needs of the nation is what we said. Entrepreneurship is transforming theory to practice. We have a lot of teachers, we have a lot of bankers, because we train in banking, we train in accountancy, we equally train in executive secretarial studies. So a lot of them, we even lack them. At times we even need our own students that we have trained in the domain that we have trained, we don't see them. When we train marketers at the level of IUG, I'm telling you honestly that there is a limitation for me to have a marketer. A marketer, if at the level is BSc, it will be difficult for you to find a marketer at the level of IUG with a BSc who says I'm doing nothing. Because what we have done, like I'm telling you, is that students should leave the school with already an objective in their mind, with a plan. And again, the school has within it a whole pool of marketers. Now that we are talking, if you come to IUG, we have recruited within our own activities to market and sell the image of the school. We have more than 30 marketers working under the auspices of the University Institute of the Gulf of Guinea to sell the image of the school.
Let's look at this issue of entrepreneurship now in terms of equipment and in terms of structuralization. Can we say that there is much that the government on its part needs to do in terms of promoting entrepreneurship education at the level of the secondary and the primary school is concerned, because it's more of a higher institutional affair? But when we look at the transit between the primary and the secondary, it's about 10 to 11 years of age, and the higher institution just take 3 years.
Yeah, that has been a failure of the Cameroonian system. We always believe to start from the top, when normally education to start from the base. I was glad to see that the Minister of Secondary Education was already defining that agriculture will be introduced within state schools, and I was state secondary schools, which has not been the issue in the past. So if we have to, it is an appeal that we are making to the government. If entrepreneurship becomes a role, then entrepreneurship should equally be considered at the junior level. Not only in secondary school, we need to tell the students that for Cameroon to emerge, if you need to do or be somebody in life, because the Cameroon government does not recruit up to 10% of Cameroonians. So what becomes of that group that all universities are training? If we go abruptly, you look at the number of students coming out of universities with certificate at the end of the year, how many of them will be capable of running an establishment? If you are asked to run a school today, will you be capable of running a school when such projects have not been immersed or implanted in your mind long ago? Everybody, those who graduate from universities, you see them becoming a teacher, and then after my grow low come out, then I moved me to the United States. Those who go out to become medical doctors, they go out to become medical doctors, or those who are studying nursing at the University of Boya, they know that after nursing, you are recruited by the state, you wait for your grolo, because in the United States, they pay doctors very well, so you move your way. Can't you study pharmacy? And then the same government think very well that these people studied pharmacy. There is a state institute. That's what I told you at the very beginning. At the conception of the new programs of the universities, government failed to create an agency to follow up. Implementation of what entrepreneurial skills students have gained in school, that is where we fail. But we have a bank, they call a bank for small and medium-sized enterprises. Government will tell you at the end of the year and blame Cameroonians that there was finances in this bank, which Cameroonians have not ended up acquiring to run their establishment. We ask, what accessibility, of what visibility was government giving access to these people? How many people have applied to that project with real defined initiative? Those who create those programs, those who bring out projects, to what extent are they being financed if such people are not related to the state? So you realize that what we call egoism and self-centered tendency still exists. The same ministers and directors of those same establishments still lobby with their friends. They bring projects, the projects are sponsored, and then the projects are not even realized. What becomes of the state finances? At the level of the Ministry of Agriculture, I'm telling you that there is a lot of funding for private or initiatives, those who carry out farming credit unions or whatsoever, or farmers clubs. At the end, how many people benefit in which domain? What results have we proven? Not as against in the past, when government gives that money, with a lot of agricultural technicians, there was follow-up to see that your farm is going on. The seeds government gives you, this is where you have planted. In 6 months' time, we start harvesting. This is what goes on at the level of the CDC. When you become a member or a partner to CDC, and CDC gives you a seat, CDC sends you with technicians, and they are sure that in 4 or 5 years' time, we are going to start reaping from these farms of the CDC. But in Cameroon, Cameroonians are left or allowed to die to themselves. Okay. And at the level now we are talking, there is a big need. There is a need if we need to rejuvenate Cameroon. I said if Cameroon needs to become an emerging country, emerging economy by 2035, entrepreneurship should be placed at the forefront of academic training. And that whatever you do, lawyers, medical doctors must not work with the government. So it is even a fallacy that government makes a concours to recruit 50 people.
I was just coming to that. Okay. I was just coming to that as well. I want to ask you this. Don't you see that our educational system, especially in terms of recruitment of students, look at students from their weaknesses and their strength? Because we've seen where if they say you don't have a certain position, you don't have a certain papers or a certain point, you will not do medicine, which we are clamoring for. The aspect of doctor in Cameroon, the ratio of Cameroon's doctor to patient is quite limited, but they must write concours and it's highly selective, and sometimes covertly students are covertly selected in this process. And we look at some state universities, they'll tell you if you have 4 points, you cannot do a certain passion which you have the subject, but because of points limitation you cannot do it. Is it not looking at the weakness of students than the strength, and yet we expect a better result at the end?
That is what I'm saying here, that we don't even need, most often than not, what we do in universities is counseling. It is even too poor to even put somebody to do something which he or she was not even aware because of the points or reject some people, because most of those who become entrepreneurs today, I will tell you that some of them will tell you that they were not even aware of what they were doing, and that they ventured into that domain before realizing that they missed a target. When you go to school, those we call them guided counselors, they are not there to force you to do a domain. They are there to let you see the potentials in you. You might have scored a B grade in physics, but then at the same time, you have scored an A grade in history. And you get home and your father is saying, like the advanced level just ended, father is telling you that since you have a B grade in physics, and there's an A grade in history, I love you to become a medical doctor. So go for a medical doctor. We have forgotten that this child too can still study the history and become somebody prominent within his domain. You know, you were yesterday with one of the highest brandage Cameroonian historian, Professor Victor Julius Ngo. They are not what they are because they did physics. And we should accept that for us to develop a nation, we don't just need what gives us money. We equally even need those who contribute in terms of ideas to construct a nation. A nation is not just constructed in a practical manner. There is also what we call the psychological part of building a nation. Even in companies, the moment you bring an idea, those who want to create companies, you need to get to a psychologist to see how this business can be feasible. Where you can locate that business will not even be done by an entrepreneur. Most often it's done by psychologists. And even the people who call them marketers. Marketers simply work on the mind of the customer. Meaning somewhere, marketers don't sell. At times, they don't even have a product. These are people who made your product, you the engineer, visible or place them into other social platforms where others can have access to. If Ali Baba, we need to get to him and see the background he has. You need to get to the Amazons, the background they have. You need to get to Steve Jobs and find out. Mark Zuckerberg. That is what we are saying. So we should not remain with this stereotype mind that since my daughter scored 5 A's, he must become a medical doctor or becomes a pilot. It is not a precondition.
But we have that. But we have that for parents, especially. It's common. That just leads me to a question, though I was not about to come there. But the student, right? Good afternoon to all, please. With due respect, I wish to ask what you will advise me to study as a father in any university as I just passed advanced level. This is what is in the minds of many advanced level students, those who pass advanced level going to the university, and most of the times parents seem to want to force them to do their choice. Maybe you will have the time to address these students.
That is what obviously is what I was saying here, because at the level of my school, you know what, when you come there for registration, there's what we call orientation, counseling and orientation, that we are taking over. The question basically asks, what are your credentials? We look at the papers you are having. What do you wish to do? Not so. You find out from the student if the student is strongly in belief of what he or she wants to do with his papers or point he has scored. But as I insist, it will not be normal for you to impose a career on somebody, the career he does not wish. We may have an upper hand or give a better option or opinion to somebody that is looming, somebody that is in doubt of what to do. But the first question I ask is, with this your paper, what do you wish to do? And I will work on that. Seriously, what were you thinking of becoming with such a qualification? After this, what do you think you are going to do? It's just like sending all those who are going to study law, that all of them are going to become lawyers. And that's others will follow. And some people, parents even look at the number, say, no, you will not do the law. But people have forgotten that doing law does not simply mean becoming a lawyer. So this is what I'm always saying. Likewise, a medical doctor must not become a medical practitioner. So people just need to know that allowance of creating for their student or their children, so that they should do what, first of all, they intend. What we need to do, we do guidance. Guidance in the sense, whether what it's doing can sell at the time, or how can it go about it. Parents have the right to mentor their children and see that what they have studied, at the end of their training, they are capable of picking up or feeding up in one domain or the other. Some of us equally went to school with the same notion that we were going to become lawyers. And then at the end of the day, you realize that you are more of a teacher, which is again still admired in his domain, and those whom you taught them are again equally active. And then you can even go ahead. Why not? Teachers now also have been proprietors. After teaching for some time, you have some time to take off and then create an institution of your own, and then you make many others. Which means a teacher who was a teacher yesterday, today becomes an entrepreneur. This is what we need. So there is a need for giving us a general knowledge. To have somebody who was a medical doctor yesterday in your establishment as a hospital unit does not stop him from owning his own hospital or even recruiting and not even practicing again. It tells you that after being a medical practitioner for 20 years, I need to withdraw and give chance to my children. Okay. I create a hospital and they manage. There are a lot of ways to come out of it.
Dr. Ako John, we are slowly but surely come to the end of this program. We have some few issues to trash here as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. We've seen schools bringing entrepreneur teachers, doctor, because they simply have master's degree or they simply have PhD to come and teach student entrepreneurship. But we expect from this domain of entrepreneurship, like a businessman who has done business in Marché Congo for 30 years or 15 years, to come and teach a particular aspect. It means that from the educational system, you must have a certain level of papers before you can teach. And most of those who are teaching entrepreneurship don't even own single businesses. How can you train someone without even having a business on your own? The worst is digital marketing. You see someone training students of digital marketing, but yet cannot be able to does not even own a Facebook page.
Yeah, Javis, I would like you to know that a lot of those the history we have read today was not written by historians. A lot of the history that we are reading today was maybe taken down by secretaries, which were qualified secretaries of the people who were carrying out the events. And one of the things which we need to know, that in academic training, there is a part of theory and then there is a part of practice. A teacher can be a good theorist, but little in practice. And that is what we're saying, that there's a need to break this interface between theory and practice. And if we need to go, there's a need for schools to get to agreement with what? Companies. So that when we train, we send these children back to fine-tune their skills at the level of the companies. Such a person, in fact, when you have been a marketer or so for 7, 8, 10 years, in fact, bringing you to the university to teach should not be a problem. If such qualifications of such years you are put in the domain can be proven. If you prove that you have run a business or you are a marketing, imagine us taking a marketing manager from Brazzaville to Cameroon who has just a bachelor's degree and has been in that domain for over 10, 15 years. Are we not ready to send him to teach maybe supply
And that
chain?
is the problem with Cameroon, because they believe that you must have the certificate and not the skills.
That is why we said when we came to this other part and found, when we crossed the Mongo, I would not like to overemphasize on that, because when you are in many English nations, they will ask you what can you do and not what certificate you have. And so you realize a lot of your brothers and sisters before leaving Cameroon, they would like to have at least a certificate in nursing, a certificate in, how can I call, salon or whatever aesthetic, those things that can easily get them find out that they go abroad. Because they know very well that crossing over, the next question the white will ask you, what can you do? Can you watch a car? You say, yes, I watch cars well. That's why if you cannot prove, okay, do it, you have 3 days, you have 24 hours to prove to others that you are capable. You are gone. Those who play football in Europe, in the name of the Roger Mila or even the Mbappé Lepe and many, went to no football academy and they proved to be the best in their domain. Can Roger Mila not be given that honor to equally be the head coach of the Indomitable Lions, even in the presence of such who have PhDs and doctors in coaching? So there is a need for us to integrate those who are practicing in their life. But what we want here is that the academic program should be exact, because the person who qualifies certificate is the Minister of Higher Education. How many years will you need to put in a professional? It exists in many domains. You be a teacher, you have been a teacher for over 10, 15 years, awards you to a particular level in academics, not necessarily going to that school. It is possible within the European Union that you practicing marketing for over 15, 10 years, if you have a bachelor degree, will award you a master certificate.
But that's not the case here.
So those are some of the innovations we said we have to introduce them. We are already doing that in IUG, because we have those who are accountants. For you to be an accountant, the minimum, some go for professional training, but most often some go with bachelor's degree, masters, they get into the cabinet and they're trained to be accountants. If you are an auditor for over 15 years, IUG will not resist to recruit you to come and give lectures in the school.
And that's the problem, because industry professionals are complaining that, yes, you should have these guys of masters, you should have them to come and teach the theoretical framework and grade the exams, but you should call us the professionals to come and handle professional issues so normal, that we can beef up the system. But the contrary is that they hire these guys or more of masters to run through all the courses and say you don't have this specific requirement to be admitted to teach in a university.
No, it is
especially
wrong.
for professional courses.
Yeah, that is what I'm saying, that it is wrong, because if you compare a lawyer that has been in practice for 15 years and a professional, I don't know, those who go in for the School of Law for 7 years and is awarded the same certificate, who will you prefer? The person that has been in practice for 15 years or he who is coming from the school for 7 years?
The person who has been in practice.
So the question is answered as it is given. So what I am saying here is that the Ministry of Higher Education should be capable of defining the lapses of the Cameroon Academic Forum, that those who have been in practice, after which domain, is 2 years. Given 7 years or 10 years in practice can be equivalent to 2 years of a master's degree. And they should apply to a university that can award them that certificate. We have given certificate to people who have never even been to school. Remember, we have honoris causa at some universities around that just in terms of your humanity and what you have contributed, we give you a diploma in a particular domain. The universities, and again, maybe it should be a CEMAC law, because now we are being all ruled by the CEMAC code when it comes to education. So we need a CEMAC Ministers of Higher Education to meet and maybe address that the professionalism in Cameroon can be awarded a certificate in this domain, and you need to apply to the university concerned and you prove that you have been in the domain. The university has to carry out investigation on what you have done. Remember what it takes for you to become a Nobel Peace Prize winner. For you to be a Nobel Peace Prize winner, people proposes you, and then the commission goes into investigation to see if really you have done before even the names are shortlisted, before being submitted for voting. So this is what goes equally professional. With us, not to give the idea that at times we give certificate that doesn't count, not forgetting that today too, education and certificates are not really the true test of knowledge.
Good afternoon, sir. Good afternoon, sir. What of a student that had 6 points with a combination to do medicine? He is being deprived to do. He is being deprived to do medicine. This other one reads, says, good afternoon, sir. Thanks for the program. I think I've greatly learned a lot today from Dr. Ako John. What I want to ask is, what of universities that reject us because of our points in which we still have the same subject as we have passed the advanced level? What at this point should we do? It's coming from an anonymous sender. Let me go now to those of you who have sent messages from WhatsApp. This one say, hello. Panel, I'm happy we have Doctor who is frank in his word. We are jobless today. It is all the fault of the government for failing to plan. Other countries do professional education, and yet we have certificates which they cannot find value in them. In the general education is a mess. As look at Japan and other countries. Today it is concours, and with bribe and corruption. Dixon from the University of Yaoundé too is writing. This other one reads, it says, good afternoon, doctor. Please, can you give us guidance as to which course to take in the universities? Thanks to all those who have written to all doctor. I want to react to the few messages that I read.
Yeah, one of the things I just said there is that a lot of students should work together with those who are ahead of them. It's not just having a certificate, but then what you come or what you end up in life. We need to be honest. We need to be honest also from the side of the parents. Parents will tell you that they have the inertia of always causing their children to do what they wish. You become a pilot, you become an engineer. Who you become in life does not really matter which certificate you have. If really you need to do something, go with what your mind tells you to do, where you may find not what you think is easy. I will equally reject that. Many students think going to school is just going to the department where you can easily have a bachelor's degree or have a master's degree. Not what even your mind is saying, because people will always go for the easy job. And if you go for the easy job, you have an easy certificate. Also remember that such a certificate may become not necessary for you because you did not even know the in and out of such a domain. So go to where you have a mind and what you think of doing. So as I said several times, I always ask students, care less about tomorrow. Don't think too much of what you are going to do tomorrow with the certificate. Care of what your mind is when it comes to deciding a career. What do I want now? Because if you ask the question of tomorrow, tomorrow does not belong to you. The person who decides tomorrow is not even you. So what I need is that you answer your question now. I need to become a doctor. I need to have a certificate in law. I need to have a certificate in geography. And if you think geography can make you better, why not? But today I said, if we need to emerge, we need to think getting professional. We need to think entrepreneuriat in our thought. Is that your domain, the one you are doing, capable of taking you away from an employment tab? Because there is no employee that has wealth. There is no employee that can employ another. The moment you start paying 2 or 3 persons, that is already a new blessing in your life. And I will always advise that people should take domains which in life, tomorrow, they can decide to be independent and stay off. Yes, you can take an employment for the start, but it should not necessarily be a permanency. It is not part of the impregnated program of the university which talk of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is training self-reliance individual, people who are capable of creating a job for themselves and again generating other jobs for others and then solving a societal problem of unemployment. If the whole nation, if the whole Africa, if the whole world become entrepreneurial, you realize that we simply put a purchase and sales atmosphere where what you don't have, you take from those who have. So when we go to choose domain in school, please try to check those domains that must and can generate more in the next future in terms of the job market.
Good afternoon to you in the studio. Your program is so interesting. Cameroon government doesn't encourage its citizens to do business at all. The tax policies are too poor. They ask a lot of taxes at this time. They hire uniform people to intimidate us, especially those of us doing businesses in Kumba, and this is coming from those of us doing business. This is coming from I am Frederic in Yaoundé. This other one read, it says, good afternoon. I'm happy. Good afternoon, Doctor, and happy Sunday. I love your program. It's coming from an anonymous sender. Doctor, this is now the last question before we look at how to put a cap on today's edition. Yes, now assuming the much talk about entrepreneurship, and if all the higher institution and government higher education putting measures to encourage entrepreneurship, the system accommodate this, because if you look at the exorbitant way of taxes and difficulties for people to run their businesses as far as getting their legalities concerned.
Yeah, the issue of taxes has always been called upon if a government needs to generate. I want to tell you that there are some nations that are presently even selling their nationality, their citizenship, to generate wealth. Can you imagine that? That you are having become a national of a nation just because you decided to invest a particular number of billions in that country. But now it's not only taxes. People have to look at the regulation, the laws, and the rules in place. When a country like ours does not favor double nationality, how will foreigners become nationals of that nation? How will they invest? So when you see a government that depends more on taxes, taxes will always be increasing every year. But when all of us, even by 2035, the Cameroon government realizes that there are even no Cameroonians interested to work with the government. Mr. Javis, I will tell you that there is going to be a shrink in the demand for taxes, because everything, the pressure government is facing is that it is creating an atmosphere of unemployment, because everybody wants to work with the government. But if all of us become entrepreneurs and that the government load is reduced, so one of the things we might advise the government is to cut down state expenditure, and that money which we have cut down used to be invested in the lives of citizens through job creation. Or they should encourage investment so that those who have been trained in the domain with verifiable and tested projects that can succeed should be financed. And then the same private sector, we need not necessarily take civil servant. We have a lot of agencies. We have a lot of schools that train. We can pass through a school to finance projects of students. We can pass through centers to finance projects. Those who have learned tailoring under the Ministry of Vocational Training, we don't need 20 people to come there for them to set a tailoring workshop. Those who have been at a vocational center and they have learned sewing or whatever, cookery or catering services, we don't need to get to the ministry to finance their centers. We simply pass through the vocational center. What the government need to do is just to put the agency to make sure that the money gets to the right quarters, and that those who were trained, if there were 15 beneficiaries here, government should follow up 2, 3, 4, 5 years on a way of return of this catch. And if we have a return, which means we are going to depend on long-term or short-term loans, which will yield, the moment the environment starts producing, then we should know that that money which was given here can be used again. That creates what we call the sustainability standard of such schemes. The government like that of South Korea did that, and Cameroon can do same. If we have to overcome taxes, then there is a need for us to come out of such a system and generate financing for the private sector. And the sustainability of such projects, as I said, meaning if the government put 20 billion this year, we know that next year we'll put another 20 billion. In 6 years' time, that money will start coming back, and the government will still use the same amount of money to finance such further projects. The Cameroonian sector and its tax system is overburdened. Administrative bottlenecks. Since Cameroon is the most corrupt country on earth, it is the loan report card that Cameroon has passed, or the transcript that we have it right in Cameroon. There is equally a need for the government to step up the effort on bribery and corruption. All those who are in prison in Cameroon today were charged for embezzlement. Nobody has been charged on a crime called bribery and corruption. What becomes of bribe that people take to 200 or to 2,000 at the level of corridors to satisfy basic documents or to permit your file pass on? How many people have been caught in that domain? There is an illness. I believe, again, the Ministry of Higher Education introducing the course Civics and Moral Education was meant to bolster the morality standard of Cameroonians. To what extent that has been workable, we have to do that or denounce that within the public service in Cameroon, with the police service got to be the most corrupt and the Ministry of Justice one of the highest in its level. There is a need for us to fight corruption in all its entirety if we need to have a more vibrant, entrepreneurial Cameroon, an emerging Cameroon by 2035.
We'll take on this final break. When we come back, we'll dot the I's and cut the T's on today's program.
From the 1st of August 2020, BT Media is getting better, going further with clearer images. Our channels, My Media Prime, My Movie Africa, French and English, My Music Africa, My Gospel Africa, Real Black 1 and 2 will be upgrading on EMA 17 with frequency 12,333, symbol rate 30,000 on a vertical polarity 17 degrees east. This is to satisfy our consumers who watch our channels for information, entertainment, and education. BT Media Group, building the future.
Yes! Save your money with Orange. Buy your Orange SIM for 100 francs only and do what you like, as you like. Dial #124*0# for enjoy every day for 5 days. 500-minute calls to Orange numbers them, 1000 megabyte, 100 SMS, call for 25 francs per minute to other networks. No be all that though. Save more money with Orange Money. For every Orange Money account where you create, enjoy money transfers for the rest of 2020. Just dial #150#. Also, for every Orange Money deposit of at least 1000 francs where you do, you go get to enjoy all free bundle advantages them. Just dial #150*20#. Something past this?
Orange.
Thanks for all those who took our time to message us and to participate on today's edition of our program. We have finally come to an end on today's edition of our program. This last message says, greetings to you, Doctor, watching live. Nice program, and that I have learned so much from my namesake. Please, can I have doctor's number for consult, for some consult? It's coming from Phi John in Boyo, and we have a lot of messages. We don't have enough time to read to all those of you who took our time to send us an SMS. Dr. Ako John Ako, thanks for joining, for coming on today's program.
Yeah, the pleasure is mine, especially again on a sensitive topic that has to do with the life and well-being of Cameroonians. We have always been there to create the consciousness of the Cameroonian people, and that entrepreneurship remains a way out. And if Cameroonians are interested, feel free. You can contact the Prime Media Prime to get to us so that you can integrate the platform of the new Cameroonian Empowerment Forum, the Cameroon Youth Movement Association.
And take our greetings back to IUJ.
They will, obviously. I believe they are watching, and we will get back to you.
And of course, we want to say a happy Sunday to you, Mr. Matthias Leonga, who was supposed to be here, but had an accident. I want to wish you well as you struggled. We say we are with you in our heart. And to all those of you who took our time to participate, we want to say thank very much for being part of today's program. I'll leave you with this: no matter the matter, what matter is your matter. No matter the matter, what matter is your matter. And what should matter for you today is that you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, for the truth is God. You can only kill the teller and not the truth. Should you kill the teller, the truth will always